Ladies and gentlemen, now today we're going to be having a little bit of a chat about the really big announcement Kabam made yesterday about more consistent balance changes coming to Marvel Contest of Champions. As you may be aware, recently they've been on a bit of a mission with the reworks in the last year and a bit, and we have the beta starting up for Old Man Logan and Colossus, and there are a few more champions like Howard the Duck, Iron Patriot, Kamala, Groot, and I believe a couple more up for kind of buff schedule in the near future as well, but this is something that I really was not expecting at all. So starting in October 2019, they're going to be moving to smaller, more frequent balance updates on our champions. So 3 months after a champion is released and we have reviewed and analyzed their data, they are going to reevaluate that champion, and if it needs a small balance up or down, they're going to notify the player base before it enters into the basic crystal pool of champions, and approximately 3 months later any changes will be made, will have been tested and then released to the community. So 6 months after the release of a character, if that character sucks or is underperforming, then that champion is going to be buffed up. If they are way overpowered, then that's going to give Kabam the kind of heads up leeway to reduce the power level of that champion. Now, with the characters that we've had this year, because we've got a bit of good news in terms of where they're starting from this one, because this is a little bit like, oh, you know, what's going to happen to my Namor? What's going to happen to my Cull Obsidian? You know, fearing for some of the slightly newer champions that are really good that have come out this year. But they do mention that the first one of these balance changes is going to be to Annihilus and Human Torch. Now, they say they've looked into the data and taken the feedback and observed that Annihilus is performing well as a defender. He's currently underperforming as an attacker and are looking at different options to improve his performance. So straight up, they're looking to kind of increase Annihilus's offensive capabilities, hopefully really ramp his damage up. And in comparison to a lot of other champions in the game, Annihilus, at least in my tier list, sits in the low demigod tier. He's got some nice damage. It's alright. It's not the worst in the game. His armor break is quite useful to have as well, and also his immunity to Incinerate and also Iceman, two very valuable bits of utility. But the point is, for the very first one that they're looking at, Annihilus, he isn't the worst champion. There are a lot of characters that are much worse in comparison. So if they jack Annihilus up, he's probably going to be at least high demigod tier, maybe even god tier after the buff in November. So it kind of looks like, again, from the second line as well, they're trying to bring all the new champions that get released up to the god tier level, because the second champion, again, that they are going to be buffing is Human Torch. So Human Torch performs very well in matches against Mystic champions, in matches where he can bypass miss and where he can reverse healing. However, outside of those conditions, he's not as strong as we'd like him to be, so we're looking at increasing his strength in those not ideal matchups. He should still have situations where he's weaker or stronger, but we want to close that gap a little. So Human Torch is going to get a little bit of a touch up there, and I do believe, like, when Human Torch has his pre-fight ability in a Mystic matchup, he does have the performance of a god tier champion. But when you're in kind of the average matchup, he feels very much like a low demigod tier champion. So I've kind of put him in the middle, because he is very like matchup, very situational, and I think he does sit quite well at the high demigod tier there, just absolutely ruining my tier list. But the point is that I think if they do enough to Human Torch, there is a strong chance, if he's viable for all sorts of different matchups in the game and kind of expands his use a little bit more, that he's probably going to be moved up to the god tier as well. So it looks like the champions that are around kind of the god tier column, maybe even beyond god tier, are kind of the power level that they're looking to raise some of the lesser characters to. Just looking from the first two examples that they have listed, because I was not expecting that they would want to buff Annihilus and Human Torch. Generally, if a champion is like fairly like they'll just leave it how it is, and it's been like that for a very long time. So it does please me to see that the first announcement we've got to these changes are kind of bringing two characters that are already like fairly good. They've got a lot of uses, a few cool stuff that they can do, up even more in terms of their viability in the end game content. So overall, just kind of considering that first post, I'm relatively optimistic about this as a whole. However, I do think there is a you know, potentially negative side to the ability to tune champions down. And I think that one, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about it. In some scenarios, it might be needed, but at the same time, you have people that are literally dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars on every new champion that comes out to the Cavalier, or really specific champions that have high prestige. Like, for example, if we have a have a look at Caps Booty's profile here. This guy, if you haven't already seen him, man, is the proud owner of a 6-star SIG 200 Namor. Now, nobody in the game knows how much Caps Booty has spent aside from Caps Booty, but Cam was doing the math the other day and he sent me kind of a rough breakdown, and he thinks that Cap might have spent about $500,000 on the Namor crystals, man. And Cap certainly isn't alone. There are a lot of people that whale out to a crazy extent that make me look like a very, very casual spender in comparison. So how, you know, if you are to tone down a champion like Namor, how do you give sufficient compensation to whales that have spent hundreds of thousands on champions like that, man? I just don't even know. I just don't even know at all. But they said this new balance cadence will be limited to minor balancing of a champion's existing kit. Abilities will not be added or removed. If a champion needs a rework, that champion will be addressed separately, and any compensation will be handled by a case-on-case basis. So if they are to adjust a champion in the downward direction, hopefully they're gonna have to put out like a big package, man, because if they're taking champions down in the future, which I really hope they don't do, again, the only ones that I might be a little bit worried about are maybe like Cull Obsidian and Namor, because I think they probably have been the two highest performing in the last like 6 months or so. So yeah, if they are to, you know, rank them down, man, you're gonna have a very, very fleshed out compensation package there, because people are dropping a lot, man, dropping a lot of cash, a lot of time to get 5- and 6-star champions. They are tremendously expensive. So yeah, I'm not really too sure how Kabam is necessarily gonna handle that one, but I think I'm not gonna like jump to any conclusion or grab the pitchfork just yet, because again, there might be any trouble. They might just be like putting in this line to say that in the future, if a champion is maybe like way too overpowered and game dominant, we might turn it down a little bit. So maybe Cole, maybe Namor are going to be safe. So we have that to look forward to, man. It's going to be an interesting one to follow, but I think at least in the shorter term, when thinking about the champions, I think there's a lot more benefit to this than there is stuff to fear, and I'll talk about why in just a moment. So yeah, an example of kind of the small tweaks they're looking to make to some of these champions. So if a champion is underperforming as an attacker, they may choose to boost the potency of their fury or cruelty effects, and if they are underperforming as a defender, we may look into decreasing the cooldown on a defensive ability. So they're also monitoring champions' defensive potential as well, which does to a certain extent scare me a little bit, man, because Alliance War has a lot of annoying defenders that have joined the game this year, so hopefully they don't make any more champions too annoying on Alliance War defense there. And the final line is just about, you know, they're going to continue to do the larger reworks and won't be reducing their frequency, and they're all excited about the upcoming Colossus and Old Man reworks this fall. So this is just the start, and our goal is to move to continue to improve older champions to increase the value players see in their existing roster. Now, I think one really big benefit about this this whole timeline and champions being kind of taking up to what I assume is the high demigod tier to god tier equivalent level is the fact that every other week, you've got to think of it from like the perspective of newer players and arena grinders. Every other week in arena, you're gonna get a newer champion coming around, you know, from November, and all of those champions that are lesser performing are gonna be buffed up. So every 2 weeks, you've got a champion in arena that is pretty much god tier. So if you rinse out the beginner intermediate bracket, most new players are then going to be leaving that beginner and intermediate bracket if they're a dedicated player with like 4 awakened god tier champions. If they're real grinders, if they can can, you know, stick their nose down, and it's quite easy to get your hands on them. But even so, like the 4-star basic arena, the cutoff for that has really gone down as well, and it's so easy to get a lot of the best champions that come out as 4-star versions. And 4-star characters, if you're a skilled player, they can still give you a really big leg up in the game as well. So I think kind of having all these newer champions which are constantly entering the basic arena, being tuned up and kind of beefed up even more, is nothing but a good thing as well. And this just makes it so that more and more god tier, high demigod tier, actual usable champions are going to be in the 5-star basic and also the featured 5-star moving forward. And alongside Annihilus and Human Torch, there's also 4 other champions that I would say are probably going to get buffed very shortly after Annihilus and Human Torch. So I'd say after that we had the Avengers Endgame event. Ebony Maw is definitely due a huge revamp, man, and as a proud owner of a 6-star Ebony Maw, I can't wait for that, because Ebony Maw sucks at the moment. His damage is absolutely terrible. His utility is quite fun to play with, but he does need a lot of love, I think, in comparison to any other champion that's been released this year, aside from maybe Diablo. And then the second character that's probably going to get a buff is Ronin as well. I just don't think Ronin has really like taken off for anybody. Nobody's really playing him. He's very much in the shadow of all of the other top tier skill champions there. So yeah, I'd like to see Ronin get jacked up a little bit more, man, and get a bit more damage and the ability to shrug off like all debuffs or multiple debuffs when you dash back with the special 1 stance change. So that'd be really, really nice to see as well. And then I think as well, it's also fairly likely that we'll see a very slight buff to Invisible Woman, hopefully allowing her to ramp up her damage a little bit quicker. I think that's kind of my biggest piece of feedback with Invisible Woman, is she's just a bit too slow and tedious to rank up, so she's not really going to see much play in her current state, unless you're a bit of a fan of the character and how her mechanics work. But I think it's likely we will see a small buff to Invisible Woman. And also, finally, I reckon there will be a small buff to Mysterio as well. I don't think Mysterio is going to be as popular as they want him to be. He's not like the worst champion in the world, but he just needs like a little bit more to allow him to deal a little bit more damage and be viable in all sorts of different matchups there. So I'd like to see a very small Mysterio buff and adjustment there as well, and hopefully there is a bit of a change to him. And then in the firing line, I think we have potentially Cull Obsidian and Namor, and I think Spider-Man's Stealth Suit is just like the perfectly balanced champions. I think he's going to be alright, but Namor's Special 3 Fury might be under fire, and Cull Obsidian, I think both of the champions, in all fairness, they have a lot of weaknesses, so I don't see any reason to tone down or nerf them, at least in my opinion. But yeah, man, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Overall, I'm going to take this for now as something that is hopefully going to be really good for the game. But there is a chance that this could be very bad for the game as well if they decide to start pegging champions down. But we'll see, man. We'll see. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, how do you feel about this announcement and the changes to Annihilus and Human Torch? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm gonna, you know, go for the glass is half full this time, but in a few months, the glass might be half empty, man. Who knows, boys? Who knows? But anyway, if you did enjoy today's video breakdown, please do smash that like button. Aside from that, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.